The five laws of overcommunication. How the world's most effective leaders actually get things done. Most leaders don't fail from a lack of intelligence. They fail from under communication. This episode reveals the five laws of overcommunication used by elite leaders to cut through the noise, create certainty, and drive execution. You'll learn how to command attention instantly through conviction, clarity, and simplicity. Eliminate confusion and misalignment so people act faster and with confidence. And number three, raise standards and accountability without drama, fear, or burnout. Stop being misunderstood and start being followed. Most business leaders and personal relationships dramatically undercommunicate. And this is the silent killer of effective leadership, effectiveness, and respect. Now, these laws apply to all types of leadership, from parenting to sports coaching to leading companies as a CEO. Now, for each one of these five laws, I want you to rate yourself on a 1 to 10 score. And at the end of this, I want you to identify which one you need to work on the most. And I want you to work on that one very hard for the next 30, 60 days until you can raise your level up to competency. And if you do this over the course of a year, raise up each one of your scores, say you pick one to work on exclusively and very hard, diligently for 30 days. In 5 months, you'll be a much different, much more respected, effective leader. Now, the magic of this is you apply any one of these, and instantly this is going to put you into top 1% leadership status because, in terms of effectiveness and respect, because very, very, very few leaders practice these five laws individually and collectively. Law number one, the law of 90-10. Listen 90% of the time, talk 10% of the time. You already know what you know. You need to know what they know. Additionally, the more you ramble on, the less respect you get. Inverse correlation there. The more you ramble, the less respect you get. The more you listen and less you talk, the more respect you get. The greatest leaders, the most respected leaders, listen more than they talk. Here's a quote from Dr. Stephen R. Covey, author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said, "If I were to summarize in one sentence the single most important principle I have learned in the field of interpersonal relationships, it would be this: seek first to understand, then to be understood." Law number two, the law of the standard. Tell the truth today. Never walk by greatness or mediocrity without saying something. If you see something, say something. Always let people know where they stand, for good and for bad. Catch people doing things right and challenge them to be better. So let me talk about some specific examples of standards in terms of attitude, effort, and behavior. And number one, you have to model them yourself. Your job is to be the greatest role model of the highest standards every day, no exceptions, no excuses in terms of attitude, effort, and behavior. So the highest standard of attitude is what Dr. Jason Selk, great mentor, friend of mine, calls relentless solution focus. That's focusing on solutions and positivity versus complaining and focus on negativity. So the highest level of attitude is a relentless solution focus, not focusing on problems, not complaining, condemning, but focusing on solutions and how you want to improve things. The greatest standard of effort is to do a little extra. As Coach Urban Meyer calls it going +2. Just go a little bit extra. Just a little bit extra in everything you do. That's the greatest standard of effort. Greatest standards of behavior, very simple. 3, number 1, be your word, meaning do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Habit number 2, be a little bit early. At minimum, be on time. When you agree to do something, you be there. The best, do a little extra. They're early. And number three, third greatest standard of behavior is to be kind and useful. You must model these three things as leaders impeccably. You must put relentless effort into these three things every day if you expect this from your team. So, most leaders catch people doing things wrong. You must do a lot more of catching people doing things right, as well as challenging them to be better. So, my three rules of standards, I call this the crown effect, are catch, challenge, care. Number one, catch people doing things right in terms of attitude, effort, and behavior when they're doing it right. Those standards. Number two, challenge people to be better when they're not hitting those standards of attitude, effort, and behavior. And number three, care enough to listen to people, to help them figure out why they're not hitting the standards. So here's a great quote from Keith Cunningham, he's known as the chairman of the board. He says, "The reason we hesitate to have the hard conversations is because we don't care enough. If you truly cared enough, you would say what needs to be said. After all, how else are we going to improve and maximize their potential? Let me remind you that nothing can change until the unsaid is spoken." Here's a quote from Tim Ferriss, author of one of my favorite books, Tools of Titans. Also, Tim has a great podcast. Tim says, "A person's success in life can be visually be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations he or she is willing to have." Here's a quote from Bill Walsh, three-time Super Bowl champion head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. He says, "Reinforce the positives and the rest takes care of itself." That's about catching people doing things right. Now, blunt communication can be very effective. It saves time. Always let people know where they stand. But we need to do it in a way that lets people keep their dignity. That means pulling people aside. There's a saying in management: praise in public, criticize in private. But blunt communication is extremely effective in terms of getting things done. Always let people know where they stand, for good and for bad. Law number three of overcommunication, the law of simplicity. Simple is remembered and acted upon, complex isn't. Let me give you some specific examples and what I mean by simplicity. Number one, identify your three most important tasks each day, and then identify the one thing that you must get done and prioritize doing that first, your one most important task. Then do number two or three. Right? Very simple. Get your three most important things done every day in order of importance. There's always one or two or three things that carry most of the heavy lifting in terms of your success, personally, as a leader, and then also your personal performance in all aspects of your life. So some great examples of this is when Kobe Bryant wanted to become a better three-point shooter, he shot 1,300 three-pointers a day over the summer. That was his one most important task. That was simplicity. When the late, great Charlie Munger, who was a billionaire and partner, vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, partner of Warren Buffett, when he wanted to learn about investing and in business and real estate, he blocked off an hour a day every day to learn about it. He was an attorney at the time, but he blocked off an hour a day every day to learn and grow. That's simplicity. Another great example of simplicity was Steve Jobs. Every year he was a co-founder of Apple. Every year he would take the top 100 employees on a retreat and they would identify the top three priorities for the next year, not the top 10, but the top three most important priorities for Apple. Another great example of simplicity is Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, his 14 leadership principles. He didn't have people read a Bible, a 300-page book on leadership. He had 14 very simple leadership principles that they lived by at Amazon. Lastly, a great example of simplicity as a leader is to speak in 8 to 30-second clips, meaning don't ramble on. Organize your thoughts in advance. Speak simply. Get to the point. Make your point simply. Curt Cignetti, head coach of Indiana football, is a great example of a very simple communicator, but he's also very mindful and thoughtful not to waste his words and not waste people's time, so it doesn't happen by accident. He puts an effort into it. Here's a quote from Perry Marshall. "You should always be suspicious of complicated things. You should be even more suspicious of people who make simple things complicated. That's my test of a master and an expert. Do they make the complex simple for us to understand and do? A charlatan will make, or an amateur will make the simple complex for us to do. Here's a quote from Paul Akers: simplification attracts, complication repels. If you complicate something, you are going to push people away. If you simplify it, you are going to magnetize everybody to you. Here's a quote from John Wooden, ESPN Coach of the Century. Won a record number of national championships as a head coach in college basketball. Coach Wooden says, don't be a coaching genius. Don't give your players too much information. Always practice simplicity with constant repetition. Here's a quote from a friend and mentor of mine, John Spence, who wrote a book called Awesomely Simple. John says that some people believe that making things complex somehow makes them look more intelligent. It's quite the opposite. As Einstein said, if you cannot explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. Here's a quote from Dr. Price Pritchett, one of my favorite authors. He says, how simple can we make this? He also says, in a world of complexity, the best weapon is simplicity. Here's 2 quotes from a great friend and mentor, teacher of mine, Dr. Alan Weiss. Dr. Weiss says, how do we get there, or asks, how do we get there fastest and easiest? He also talks about what's called Occam's razor, which is the quickest solution, the easiest solution is probably going to be the most effective. Occam said the easiest way is always the best way. I found that to be true in most cases. Here's a great story from Lee Clow. I learned this from David Senra on the Founders Podcast, the greatest podcast for high performers. And he talks about Lee Clow is teaching Steve Jobs about what a great ad is. And Lee throws Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, 5 pieces of paper in the air and asks Steve to catch them, and he can't catch any of them. Then he throws Steve 1 piece of paper and Steve catches it. So that is an example of a good ad. One thing, you can catch it. It's simple. You can't catch 5 different things at once. Great story. Thank you, David Senra. Law number 4, the law of self-conviction. Conviction commands attention. Conviction cuts through the noise. Where conviction exists, attention follows. Hesitation is ignored. Conviction is followed. Here's a quote from Brian Billick, Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens head coach. He says, if you don't think you're the guy, you're not. And if you were going to hold one of these jobs, you better think you're one of the guys. He says, John Adams said, you've mistaken my passion for ego and my conviction for arrogance. Here's a quote from Dan Kennedy, great author, business author. People actually prefer to be associated with someone who is absolutely certain of themselves and their convictions. You have to earn this certainty and conviction through repetitions, through learning and growing and gaining that true expertise through deliberate practice, doing the hard repetitions, learning from experts and reading and evaluating yourself about what you're doing right and what you could do better, and getting that feedback from coaches and mentors, and really pushing yourself to become an expert so you can speak with self-conviction. Here's some great examples of people who speak with self-conviction. Barack Obama and Donald Trump. All presidents who get elected speak with great self-conviction. It's a requirement. Okay, there's levels to it. So that's an apolitical statement, though, about 2 presidents, but they both speak with conviction. Nick Saban, 7-time national champion football coach at Alabama, speaks with great self-conviction. Admiral William McRaven, author of some of my favorite books, The Hero Code, Wisdom of the Bullfrog. He was the admiral. He was a Navy SEAL, one of the greatest experts, living experts on leadership, one of the greatest leaders we have in this country. He speaks with great self-conviction when you talk to him. These are earned pieces of self-conviction. Lastly, law number 5, the law of 7. When you get sick of saying something and they get sick of hearing something, that's when it starts to sink in. A message needs to be repeated a minimum of 7 times before it sinks in. And this rule of 7 is from a study on marketing, and John Stephen talks about this. The rule of 7 is a marketing principle that states that your prospects need to come across your offer at least 7 times before they really notice it and start to take action. So you need to say something over and over again before it starts to sink in. Here's a quote from the great book, The CEO Next Door, from the authors here. Any message has to be repeated 7 times in 7 different ways before an organization has any hope of hearing it. Formal memo. videotape, a blog, posting a printed memo on a bulletin board, a town hall meeting, parking lot talk as you're walking, chat around the water cooler. You've got to push. You can't over communicate. So lastly, let's talk about the inversions above the line and below the line. Under communication, we want to over communicate. And this is what under communication is. Number one, long-windedness and talking when you should be listening. Okay, that's the inversion of our law, 90-10, listen 90% of the time. Second inversion, the law of high standards, the law of the standard, which is living up and upholding the highest standards of attitude, effort, and behavior. The inversion of that under the line is living and tolerating low standards. Okay, number three, the law of simplicity would be the inversion is overcomplicating things, long messages, 10 priorities for the year, 10 most important tasks each day. You need to simplify. The inversion of law number four, the law of self-conviction, is timidity. Speaking quietly, not speaking with conviction and certainty. Okay, it does not cut through the noise. People will not follow you if you don't speak with self-conviction. And then lastly, the inversion of the law of seven, saying the same simple thing over and over again, is what I call flavor of the week. Different message every week, different idea. Or having saying something once and expecting people to understand it and sink in. You've got to say the same important things over and over again. So once again, my challenge to you is identify which law you need to work on the most and really challenge yourself to push it. I'm going to say minimum 30 days to really get serious about being an expert at this law and getting it up to a 9 or a 10 as you would score yourself. Again, any one of these, you practice any one of these today, this is going to instantly put you into a top 1% leadership category because they're so rare. You can instantly, you attack all five today, you are instantly a top 1% leader. It's that simple. These aren't complicated. Don't overthink this. I wish you an elevated life of success, happiness, and positive impact.